And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Hello, foil fanatics, and welcome back to Tinfoil Tells. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guest, Terri Lynn. Terri Lynn has had some experiences with Dogman on her property up in Canada. She'd like to come on here tonight and talk a little bit about that. A lot of weird things going on up there. But before we bring her on, got a little bit of business to take care of like I usually do. If you'd like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tells, all you got to do is send an email to tinfoiltellspodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you scheduled on a future episode. If you would like to help the podcast out, share it around. Follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, X. Starting to use Instagram a little bit more, so hopefully trying to figure that out. If you listen to us on Spotify or Apple or any streaming platform, we also have YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, we have other streaming platforms as well, so you can like us and follow us on any of those. I'd like to hear some feedback from you guys. Leave some comments, leave some reviews. 5-star review helps out. So if you want to help out, you can do that. The best way of helping the podcast, though, is, again, sharing it around with anyone you think would enjoy it. Share an episode, share the whole link to every episode. Whatever it is you got to do to help out, I truly appreciate everything you do. If you would like to help out financially, which, again, I will not ask for that, but there is a donate button. If you guys would like to help donate, I will definitely give you a shout out. Just make sure you let me know that you have, and I will shout you out on the next episode that I record. If you do not like ads, as much as I don't like ads, but I also don't like to ask for money for anything like this, but if you're interested in joining the Patreon, you can be a subscriber. You'll get early access to all the episodes. And by early, I mean weeks in advance. Not only that, but you can also have ad-free experience. It does help keep this podcast going because the financial aspect of it has gotten to be a burden. And this is the reality of the beast that we live in these days. So if you enjoy Tinfoil Tells and you want to help keep it floating, you can always join that Patreon. There's a community on there. You can talk with others, get early access to the episodes, some discounts for some merch, and some other cool little perks. Definitely check out the Patreon. The links are available inside of the show notes. Been a lot of things going on, been appearing on a lot of different podcasts, so you might look around and you can see that I've been appearing on different podcasts here and there, talking about my experience and my book, Shadows of Cedarville, which, by the way, is available on Amazon for anyone out there. It's also in other bookstores, too. You can pick up your copy today. If you happen to read it, if you enjoy it, even if you don't enjoy it, leave a review. The reviews on there can help me out, too. We're going to go ahead now, though, and bring Terri on. So, been looking forward to talking with her. Hope you guys enjoy the conversations. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Terri. Thanks for coming on and talking with me.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's really nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. So where are you from?
I actually live in just outside of Leduc, Alberta, Canada. We're on an acreage just in Leduc County. And so we're up in your northern neighbors here.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I believe you're the first Canadian I've interviewed on this show.
Well, that's cool.
I don't believe there's anyone else. I think you're the first.
Well, I'm glad to have that title.
I said I've had Australia, I've had England, and I've had, I believe, Sweden, but never Canada yet. So,
Well, now you can add it to the list.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and I had Peru a couple
Oh,
months
yeah,
ago.
yeah. I did listen to that one.
So, a little bit global.
It's awesome.
But you reached out to me, said you had some property and had some experiences on there. If you want to just kind of dive on into it, go ahead.
For sure, for sure. So just to kind of share a little bit about myself before I go into the story, because I think it really has a role in how I approached my belief or my process, my sort of mental processing of what we encountered in the instances that we did on our property. So a little bit about me. I've been married to my husband now we've been together 31 years and married for 24 years. And we have 2 kids and 2 grandchildren. And so I the one side of me, I'm trained, I have a degree in psychology, and my whole career has been about assessing and supporting families through trauma and through all kinds of difficult situations, and how to basically assess their needs and intervene as needed. And I have been doing that career since 1999. So when I think of these things, it's really important to know that I also come from a place of having sat back and really assessed from a bigger scale. Didn't just jump in and wasn't an automatic believer of everything. I didn't initially really even know anything about Dogman at all prior. I had heard of werewolves, your stereotypical Hollywood stories of werewolves, but it wasn't anything I actually thought was real or had believed in or was following or reading. I never read up anything on cryptids. I have a Cree Métis background. I grew up, of course, with our pronunciation of the Wendigo is Witagu, and in Cree, in the Northern Cree. And so I grew up always with it's kind of funny with how I was raised. So often when you're taking care of your kids and you tell them, like, don't leave the yard or the boogeyman will get you. Well, for us, it was don't leave the yard or the Witagu will get you, and stay in your room and go to bed or Witagu will get you. It was all those sorts of threats. I never really knew what the Witagu was. In my mind, I kind of created this vision of what I thought it was, and I wasn't afraid of it. In fact, as a child, I remember going out in the forest challenging, going, okay, I'd like to see this Witagu. Where is it? And never really finding one. But beyond any cryptids, that's been my only sort of knowledge level at that point. And that came purely from a cultural exposure to talking about it. So when we had our first encounter, it was my husband who it happened to. So it was in early October of 2018. And he was just prepping to go to work. It was really early morning. It was kind of on the cusp of daylight from morning dusk. And if you imagine a 2-story house with a double attached garage, and the front parking pad is where his 1-ton truck was pulled right up to the house. You could walk kind of between the two, but it was up close, and with the front nose, the front of the truck facing the house. Really important for understanding kind of a visual to what we think was happening. So my husband was working the Alberta rigs at the time, oil rigs, and he had to leave to get on the road so he could be at his rig for his night shift. And so he had quite a long drive ahead of him. And so he had his coffee cup in one hand and he had his work bag with all of his clothes, like a big duffel bag kind of thing, big hockey bag. with all of his rig stuff in the other hand. He had gone out through the garage door and opened up the back door, and opened the door and slung his bag inside the cab of the truck. And as he was doing so, he heard a very soft growl. And so he kind of thought it was really strange. And all of a sudden, the motion kind of caught his eye. Something just grabbed his attention, and he looked upward. And standing in the bed of his truck with the front paws, if you would call them that, or arms, up on the top of the roof of the truck, the roof of the cab of the truck, and standing almost like it was going to pounce up onto the roof of the truck, and then use that as a stepping stone to get up onto the roof of the house, which will make sense in a few minutes. Anyway, he froze. He remembers thinking like he was really confused, really trying to process, what am I seeing here? And so how he described it to me was, this thing had pulled back its lips, like it was like, literally he described it was like how our dog would pull back and we tell him to smile at us, and he would pull up his lips and bare his teeth, but then the growl went silent. It stopped growling, and it just sat there baring its teeth at him. But it looked like kind of like a smile. And so he's looking at it, and he shut his truck door, and he turned around and came walking right back into the house. And he said, well, I can't go. And at first I said to him, why are you back in here? Did you forget something? And he said, no, I can't leave. And I said, why? And he said, and I could see the look of how he's trying to explain this to me, how it wasn't making sense to him. He was so confused. And he said, there's a wolf in my truck? And I kind of laughed. I let out this like, what? There's a wolf in your truck? Like, what are you talking about? And I said, show me. So I go following him out to the truck in my slippers and in my work clothes. And of course it's gone. And he's like, it was here. And so he just started describing to me. And so I said, all right, explain to me exactly what you saw. And he said, well, it was huge. Like if this thing stood up straight tall, it would have been minimum 8 feet tall. It was kind of hunched, like it was leaning over the cab of my truck, looking down at me as I was throwing my bag into my truck. And he said it was a gray fur. Its eyes were piercing. It was extremely muscular, but like a very, I don't want to say gaunt. It's not gaunt. It's a lean sort of look to them. Skinny, tall, and lean, but very muscular. And he said, like it looked like a healthy wolf. He said, because he grew up as well with an uncle who used to hunt wolves up in the north. And so he's very used to having seen wolves when he was staying with his uncle. And he said, like, this thing was massive. He said, this wasn't normal. I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And so anyway, because it was gone, he left to work. And we had agreed, let's just not say anything to our daughter. Our son was already moved out at the time. He was already adult and grown up and gone. And we said, let's just not say anything yet because we don't understand what this is. We don't want to scare our daughter. Let's just figure it out first. And so we kind of kept it between us for a bit. And I started trying to do a little bit of research. I reached out to someone who I thought might know a little bit more, but not until after the next 2 encounters. So I was kind of researching, but everything I was researching was kind of coming up with werewolf because I wasn't searching Dogman. I hadn't heard of the term. Yeah. And so I just ignored it. And in my mind, we have a shapeshifter on our property and we've seen it take shape of many different animals. So my mind kind of went to, perhaps it's just our shapeshifter, and left it at that. I kind of that's how I explained it to myself. And I carried on. Well, 2 weeks later, our daughter was she was leaving for work, and she had to leave at 4 a.m. for opening shift. And she parks just out front of, on the same parking pad where my husband was, but a little more over, because we have a shop that's right alongside the house, and she parks in front of that. So anyway, she had opened up the same garage door, the big double-sized garage door, to walk out and to take her work stuff out to her vehicle. And she had her coffee cup as well. And her usual routine was to warm up her vehicle a few minutes, kind of gather her thoughts, and then head on out. And I was home alone at this point because my husband was still at work on the rigs. And I was sleeping. And as she was walking across the parking pad towards her vehicle, she could hear this low growling, but she was looking around. She couldn't see where it was coming from, because she wasn't expecting to look up and see an 8 to 10 foot wolf standing on the roof of our garage attached to our 2-story house, looking down at her with us, growling softly. So her eyes by now were adjusted to the dark, because it was a dark dusk at that time. Like, it was quite dark, actually, because this would have been now going into probably 3rd week of October of 2018. And so here in Alberta, it does get dark pretty early and quickly for us as we get closer to winter. So it would have been relatively dark. So by now her eyes were adjusted, and she's looking up, and she could see this thing. And she said the eyes were glowing, looking down at her. They were glowing yellow. She could definitely see very clearly what she was looking at. And she described exactly the same thing, this gray wolf standing on hind legs, looking down at her from the roof of our house, the lower roof. Because if it's as it being a 2-story, we have over the garage and then around the first floor, and then we have a second roof that's up on the top of the house for the second floor. And it turns out that this thing was standing right at my bedroom window, which is right over top of the peak of the garage door, like the garage roof. Sorry. And so anyway, she texted me a long text from her vehicle. She decided to get in her vehicle, and she was watching it for a few minutes, and it was just standing there watching her. And then she knew she had to get going so she got to work on time. She, instead of phoning me from her vehicle, she texted, and I had this long text as she's describing and what she's looking up at. And I kind of laughed, because I'm like thinking to myself, I'm sleeping. I have no idea what's happening. And there's an 8 to 10 foot wolf standing outside my bedroom window. And you don't think to wake me up and make sure that I'm going to be okay as you leave me there with this wolf on the roof. So anyway, she left to work. And so that was that one. And then, so she comes home, and I wake up to this text, and I'm texting her. I'm like, oh my God, you left me with this thing. And, and then I teased her a little bit about it. And I'm like, okay, I need to tell you, Dad saw something 2 weeks ago that is exactly what you described. And I said, we'll talk about it more when you get home from work. And so we did. I said, okay, tell me. And so everything I just kind of explained to you is how she explained it to me. I asked her, did you feel afraid? And she said, weirdly, no. She said, I felt confused. I felt disbelief, like I wasn't processing what I was seeing. And she said, and it was like I was looking at it, but not believing what I was seeing. Mm-hmm. And she said, but it was like it knew I wasn't afraid. I just sat there staring at it, and it stared back at me. It didn't make a move for me. And same with my husband. He said it never made a move for him. It just stayed in position and just watched him. He too said he never felt threatened in any way. It just almost like it took pleasure in the fact that it had been seen. And it just let them be, almost like it just wanted to acknowledge, I'm here, you're here, I know you see me, I see you. as long as you're not making any move towards me, I'm just going to not make a move towards you, is how it kind of came across from both of them. And she said to me, Mom, after I explained to her father's experience, she said, Mom, please. She had just started dating in that August, a guy. And she said, she was really thinking like this guy could potentially be the one. And she said, Mom, like, you have crystals all over the house and like he already thinks you're a witch. Please don't bring this up. Don't tell him anything. I don't want him to be afraid and I don't want him to run screaming. And because she's like, he could actually be the one. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to leave it up to you to share. It's your story to share. I said, and whenever you're ready, you can tell him then, and you let me know so we know that we can talk openly about what's happening, because we have so many other things that happen on our acreage, paranormal wise. And so we didn't say anything. And so then it was 2 weeks after that. So we're now looking into the first week of November now. And her boyfriend's over. I'm in bed sleeping. It's just shortly after midnight. So of course it's really dark. And it's a weekend. They're doing a marathon of a show that they wanted to watch. There was like something like 6 or 8 seasons or something. So they had been doing this every weekend. It was their thing. And so they were taking one of their regular breaks from the show marathon, and he went outside to have a vape. And so he walked out the front door and he walked along the sidewalk towards exactly where my husband's truck would have been parked, but now his car, the boyfriend's car, is parked there. And so he was just kind of pacing along the sidewalk, just moving around, having a vape, and all of a sudden he could hear growling. And he immediately looks up. He doesn't look around. He knew it was coming from higher up. So he kind of looks up because he's facing the garage and he can see movement up there subtly. So he looks and he sees an 8 to 10 foot wolf standing on its hind legs on our garage roof. And he didn't really describe a whole lot about his feelings around seeing it. He's not the type to really go into that kind of detail, but he did talk about how he was dumbfounded and just confused. And he turns around on a dime, comes right inside the house, and he said, you have a wolf on the roof of your house. And so our daughter says, well, let me tell you about our acreage and our family. And she's like, let me explain something to you. This is no surprise. And so he learned very quickly that night. That was the end of their show watching for that night. And they sat down, had a conversation about everything, and that he is not the first to have seen it. And so now's the point where I'm like, all right, seeing this thing 3 times. And again, they didn't wake me up to say, Mom, you have a wolf outside your window standing on the roof of the house, and it's pretty darn big. Nothing. So again, I didn't wake up. I didn't find out till the next morning when I woke up and my daughter told me about it. So I guess like at this point, I hadn't seen anything on our acreage that I could say at that time I had seen a Dogman. Now, I've had a couple other encounters now as I've learned more about Dogman, that I think it could have been a Dogman encounter in our forest or out in our yard. And I just didn't realize that's what it was that I was seeing at the time or encountering. So again, this is at the point where I still know nothing really about cryptids, Dogman, nothing. So I reached out to someone who I thought might know some answers. And I said, look, we've had these 3 situations, and in a really short amount of time, 6 weeks, basically, we've had 3 sightings, all pretty much in the same location. And I'm really curious as to what this is. And that's when that person came back to me. Oh my gosh, you've had a Dogman encounter on your property. And I went, oh, what? And so then that person sent me some links, and that's when I started to learn more, and I was like, okay. And so then as I started delving into it and I saw some pictures and whatnot, I asked my husband, daughter, and future son-in-law, because they are now engaged, and they're still together. I asked them, like, is this what you'd seen? And they said, yes, absolutely. They all individually, because we made sure that each person gave their descriptions separate from one another right away. As soon as that third encounter happened, I said, all right, I'm going to individually have conversations with you guys on Messenger, and I want you each, because they were all in their own, they were all at their own jobs. I said, today, before you talk with each other, I want you to send me everything from your memory of a description and a picture of what you think you saw. And if you can Google online Dogman. And so they sent me back, and it was pretty much the same creature that they had seen. So of course, between then and now, I started doing a lot of research into it, discovering there's some connections between the Indigenous communities with Dogman. A lot of encounters seem to occur with people who have Indigenous backgrounds, First Nations, or perhaps in U.S., you guys may still reference it as Native American.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Canada, it's Indigenous or First Nations is what we reference ourselves as. So that's kind of the first three encounters that spurred a whole bunch of other movement in paranormal investigation on our property in regards to Dogman.
What year did all this take place, did you say?
2018.
2018, so fairly recently.
Oh, yeah. And then since then, I have seen it. It was the summer of 2022. I was watching a show. It was midnight, and I decided I better get to bed. And we had a little Shih Tzu in the house, and so I was just kind of penning her into the front entryway area. And doing that, I turned on the front entryway light, the interior light. And as I walked, so if you can envision, I have this front entryway. I have one long vertical window, and then I have the front door. If you picture like three-sided entryway, the ones on the left wall is the vertical window, tall, skinny window. And then on the center one is a door with a window in the upper portion and two little side windows beside it on each side. And then on the third wall is another identical window as the one on the left, a skinny, tall window. No curtains. I can see out clearly. And so I was just about to get the dog. I was just telling her it's bedtime, and I was going to pen her into her little kennel area. And as I was moving by the first window on the left side, I could see clearly down over the veranda fence of our front veranda, onto the grass. And it was the movement that caught my eye. And I saw something just suddenly just drop downward. And I was like, what was that? And as I looked out, I saw two yellow glowing eyes staring at me. I saw the full silhouette of like, what would it be? What I could describe as like a wolf or like a German shepherd, the tall pointed ears. I saw the whole, like the head shape, the ears, and he was crouched. And it was almost like the feeling I got was, I hope you don't see me, not realizing his eyes are glowing. And I'm looking right into his eyes. And I'm like, okay, I'm home alone and I don't really want to engage. I know now what I'm seeing. There was a little instinct in me of fear, but there was also, you know what, if I don't engage with you, I know everything's going to be just fine. And so you carry on and protect the property and do your rounds is what I was kind of saying inside my head. I won't bother you. I'm carrying on with my routine, and I hope you don't interfere with my routine, and have a good night and just sort of be on your way. And that's kind of how I put it in my head out. And that's everything was fine, but I could see it. So I don't know if it was crouching to jump up to the roof, or it was crouching because suddenly a light came on and it didn't want to be seen. And it was just watching me to see what would happen next. And so then I just carried on with putting the dog away, and I just ignored it. My instinct was, you're home alone, ignore it. Don't engage, don't go outside, don't anything, because you don't know. As much as I don't feel threatened by it, you're still dealing with a very real cryptid, a very real entity of some sort that has the capacity to be dangerous if it feels threatened in any way. So you don't want to engage. And so I just ignored it, and there was no problems. So that was another time I had seen it. And then since then, in August of 2022, we started doing tours on our property, and there's a bigger picture of other paranormal stuff that's happening on our property. And we have all kinds of paranormal evidence. We have EVP recordings. We have spirit box recordings. We have videos with anomalies, photos with anomalies. We've had them all examined by a number of paranormal experts, and determined that, yeah, they are authentic. Nothing's been faked in any way or altered in any way. And a lot of what we found in there was unexplainable. So we decided there's a bigger story kind of that ties into our acreage that people learn as they take this tour. We explain sort of the story, the history of the acreage and the ties we have to local crimes and different things that are happening. And so our property, we've since called our tours Haunted Hollow. And so this right now is kind of our busy season, of course, because it's October and fall. And then we start to wrap things up as we hit our snowfall, because we can't do our tours out in the forest when it gets too cold and too snowy.
Yeah.
And but during one of our tours last year in August of 2022, I had 20 people. There was 23 people total, including me. And I was standing between the two buildings, the shop and the house. So at the front of the house would be the front of the garage that I just described, and the parking pads on both sides. And then behind us would be opening to a very large yard. We have a yard space, probably about equivalent of 5 acres, cleared and landscaped and whatnot. And there's a big 5-foot fire bowl that's down in the yard in the grass. So I had my back to the backyard as I was explaining some paranormal experiences in that location. And we're standing on a concrete sort of patio between the two buildings. And then there's stairs and flower beds and different things that go down along the deck that heads towards the fire pit. And all of a sudden, everyone starts gasping and exclaiming and freaking out. And they're telling me, look, look, look. And they're interrupting me. And so I turn around, and we're all watching this Dogman standing on hind legs. And it's standing up. So how do I explain this? You know how they have their proverbial backwards knee?
Yeah.
So they have their paw, then they have the backwards knee, and then their knee comes forward with the proper knee, and then it comes up to the hip and the body.
Mm-hmm.
When they're standing full height, they're having to balance on those paws. So there's a little bit of a sway in them as they're just maintaining their balance. And so we're watching the glowing yellow eyes and this thing swaying, staring at us. And it's just watching us, and everyone's doing the whole, oh my God, am I seeing this? Are you seeing this? Oh, where's my phone? I need to start recording. And everyone's just so busy in awe watching. And they're like, is this what you're talking about? Is this Dogman? And I said, yes, this is him. And we're watching him, and he's massive, standing like easily 8 to 10 feet tall. And he's probably about 20 yards from us. And it's August, so it's just getting kind of like a dark dusk. So we're watching it. It's watching us. It's going back and forth. And so if you imagine this thing kind of just bobbing back and forth, balancing and just finding its kind of groove on its legs back and forth, left to right. And then all of a sudden it does this little dip like this. And then everyone is watching and they're doing these gasps and it blinks. So the yellow glowing eyes go shut and then they open again. And everyone, wow, like they just freak out. And they're like, oh my God, this isn't real. This is like, am I seeing this? And they're just doing lots of exclamations. And I'm like telling them, nobody run, everybody stay here. Remember the safety rules I explained. We must remain here. We have to keep our distance. And so they were staying there. A neighbor's dog lets out a bunch of barks and it just disappears into thin air. It's just gone out like nowhere. We didn't see it, nothing. Like the eyes just disappeared. And the whole thing was gone, body and all. And so, of course, there was 2 particular men in the group who went running, and I had to holler at them, you get back here, like, that's not safe to go chasing this thing. Stay with the group. And but all that night, we had yellow eyes following us in the forest as we're walking along the trails. Lots of people were pointing out, seeing them. And we caught it on a few different cameras, actually, video of the yellow glowing eyes. So, yeah, so it's been, since then, we have seen them on our tours. And my husband and I have started doing our own personal sort of investigations, just wanting to understand a bit more about it. Watching a whole lot of YouTube videos on other families who've experienced it down in Ohio. I know there's a couple down there who are on an acreage and their experiences are very mirroring to ours. We've been in touch with the investigator who's done a lot of work on the Beast of Bray Road property with Lee Hample and done a lot of comparisons. And we were finding that our Dogman and understanding a bit about the Dogmen that are on Land Between the Lake as well, is that the Dogman on Beast of Bray Road and the Dogman on our property are very similar in their description, with the tall, sharp, pointed German Shepherd type ears, the thinner, taller body, and the demeanor. The temperament is a lot more calmer. Almost more curious. I wouldn't say shy. I would say cautious. Very, very intelligent, extremely ancient, connected to Earth, connected to something bigger and deeper than any of us. When you look into those eyes, you know you're looking at something that has this deep intelligence that I can't even begin to describe, that they know all the answers about things in the universe, about history, about so much more than our experience. And so they really almost have this dismissive, not intolerant, but they do have a little bit of a impatient air about them. When you encounter them, it's a bit of mutual respect. If you voice out to them or you speak to them in a way where you say, you know what, we honor you, which is how we've chosen to approach it on our property. We've seen lots of videos where people are taking shotguns, trying to chase them off and shooting guns at them and stuff, and that's not going to get you anywhere. That is dangerous. Here we've chosen to say to them, we honor you. Thank you for being protectors of the property, keepers of the land. We want to live in a mutual state of respect, mutual respect. And with you, we understand you've been coming here long before we've been on this land. So we've really taken a very a calm, respectful approach to it. And I can tell you, we have never had any issues. In fact, we feel almost like there's a sense of protection that comes with them if they feel that it's not that it's warranted, that it's earned. If they feel that, you get that. And it's strange. It's hard to describe. I've had conversations with other Indigenous people throughout Canada and United States who have had dogmen on their properties for generations, and they said the same things, that that historically our people, as First Nations or Indigenous peoples of the land, they've been talking about and having relationships with Dogman for eons, for time for time immemorial, meaning time eternity, since the beginning of our people's time. And so I think that there is, when they encounter you and you have a bloodline that has an Indigenous part to it, I think that they recognize it, to be honest with you. And I think that, I don't know, I think we've set the tone here for them. So yeah. I've had a couple other encounters that I'm not 100% sure. I can't say exactly was Dogman, because we have some other stuff around our property with other stuff. But I had some really weird encounter. So we know through our conversations and comparisons of evidence collecting, that these dogmen have an ability to take on a mist form when the cameras don't seem to catch them so well. And so like they set up videos at video cameras and trail cams and whatnot at Beast of Bray Road property, and to just see what would happen if they made offerings of meat and stuff. Have you heard about all of this?
No, I haven't done a lot of research on the Beast of Bray Road.
Okay, so they would put out, like say a deer, fresh roadkill deer or some other critter, and they would put it right in line with the trail cam or video camera, and just to see if they could capture anything. And what would happen is they would have this entire deer hung up from a tree branch, like a higher, stronger location, and you could see it hanging, and all of a sudden through the night you would see this mist form suddenly appear before the camera, and as the mist dissipated, the deer was moved or gone completely, or the animal. At one point it was moved something like 8 or 10 feet from its location and found in a completely different location when the mist just came in, filled the camera, and then disappeared. So anyway, there was so on one of our tours, I was at the front of the line with a group of people, and we had been seeing Dogman that particular night. And I could sense, and I was ahead of the group, and I was standing there, and I knew something just felt strange about, because the forest and the air becomes extremely still. Everything's silent. It's like you're in a sound chamber when Dogman's around. There is no ambient air sounds. It's like your heartbeat is so loud because everything around you is silent. There's no birds. There's no insects. There's no wind. There's no leaves fluttering on the trees. There's no branches or trees creaking or swaying. Everything is absolutely still when it comes near. So something just felt off. And so I was standing there kind of just looking around, and all of a sudden I could feel this like a gruff or a huff of air. Like it was like something just went, I can't even duplicate the sound because it was a deep guttural huff of air. It blew my bangs up, and I jumped back, and the person who was a couple people behind me started freaking out because she was running her video on her camera. And she said, suddenly smoke just appeared all around me as that had happened. And you can see it on the video where I turned around and I said, there was a gruff. And I said, my bangs blew up. And it startled me because my bangs moved. It's just this puff of air, like something just breathed very hard and very fast right in my face. But I think what it was is it wasn't breathing in my face. I think it was shifting itself into mist form, and that's just the sound it makes as it is leaving or disappearing or whatever it does. And so anyway, that was kind of a strange situation. And I don't know how else to explain it. It was just strange.
I had a couple questions about Dogman appearances. You said it had the German Shepherd look. Where were the ears at on it?
The ears were kind of top side, like the top sides of the head coming straight up. Yeah, like it would be like if you looked at a silhouette of a German Shepherd and you could see how the ears were perked upward.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much outward. Like with Land Between the Lakes, it seems like the Dogmans are smaller. They're shorter. They're huskier, more heavy, and they almost seem more aggressive in the way people describe them. And they have red glowing eyes, is my understanding, versus the yellow glowing eyes.
The thing that I saw looked like a black German Shepherd, and it had everything about it looked like a normal German Shepherd, other than the fact that it was able to stand up on its 2 feet. Mm-hmm. And its eyes glowed yellow, but my headlights were shining on it. So I always wrote that off as eye shine. But
there is a huge difference between eye shine and the yellow glowing eyes. If you imagine 2 LED lights, with eye shine, there's this glint that comes and then it goes. It as long as it's standing really still and looking and not moving or shifting its eyes left or right or up or down in any fraction of of movement, you will continuously have that eye shine. But with the glowing eyes, it's when you look at an incandescent bulb in the dark, you get sort of those little star beams that come off of them in the dark where it glows. You can see, well, there's the center light, but then it glows beyond it. These do not do that. Their eyes are very defined circles, the size of eyes, and that's it. It glows from within them. And it doesn't glow out like, it doesn't light up the ground around them. It doesn't light up in front of their face. It's just the eyes that glow.
Did you ever notice if they had tails?
You know what? I never did notice, because in my front veranda experience, when in the front window, it was crouched straight on looking at me, and I was seeing the silhouette with the glowing eyes. So its tail would have been, if it had a tail, it would have been hidden. My husband doesn't even recall a tail, as far as I know, because he was so busy staring up at the face and the upper body, and that he doesn't remember really focusing a lot on the back end. And our daughter and future son-in-law, they never even mentioned a tail.
That's the one thing I've started to notice. Someone asked me if what I saw had a tail. I said, you know what? I don't remember actually seeing a tail. And I was like, I feel like it had one, but the more I replayed in my head, I don't remember ever really seeing a tail on it.
You know what? Now I'm going to watch for that. I'm going to be really mindful and see. So if I have a future encounter again with the ones on our property, I'll let you know.
I think what they were trying to explain away was, I saw a bear. I know what the difference between a bear and a dog. So if it didn't have a tail, they're like, oh, it's clearly a bear.
Yeah, no, these bodies are extremely different. I've grown up with bears. I grew up in a northern Alberta community where bears are a part of everyday life in the town, and this is not a bear.
Yeah, we don't even have bears here where I live, but we also don't have upright walking canines either. So, I mean.
Right? So I did put out, I'm part of the little local crime private page for people who live in this area. And so I kind of put out a question saying, hey, I'm just curious if anyone's had any kind of strange encounters, paranormal on their property, or, did you encounter an oversized wolf that you really can't explain? Like maybe 8 to 10 feet tall. reach out to me privately by message if you want to talk privately. And within an hour, I had 3 different people reach out to me. And I did have a guy describe 2 encounters. He didn't see Dogman directly, but he believes that what he saw was the result, or experienced was the result of something like a tall or big wolf type thing, or a Dogman. So the one experience was back in, I believe he said it was around, I'd have to look, but I think it was around 2013 or something. I'd have to look again to be sure. So, don't hold me to the year. But he's very familiar with all of the rural areas here. We've got lots of, our property before we moved here was lots of trails and just nothing but bush. So everyone kind of locally used it as trails. So he's very familiar with our property. And anyway, down close to us, we have a lake. It's Coal Lake. And along the lake, there's a number of different sort of trails and locations you can pull off the lake, and an ATV or skidoo around, snow sled is what we'd be doing out here in the winter months. Well, he was on a skidoo. It was wintertime, and he had pulled up into a little spot that's along the lake where he could access. And he encountered in the forest something he said was so horrific. It was like, he doesn't even know how many coyotes it would have been, but it was a lot of coyotes, bodies completely ripped to pieces, intestines hanging out, body parts of the coyote strung up, sometimes like 20, 30 feet into the trees along the branches. It was like a murder scene, he said, in various states of decomposition. So this was a place that seemed to be a murder site that was favored by whatever was doing this. And these coyotes were just shredded. Very evidently not like attacked. And so anyway, he got really scared and he left, and he talked to a few friends of his. He's an avid hunter. He's an avid outdoorsman. He's very familiar with hunting and different things like that. And he thought, I'm going to bring a couple of my friends. So there was 3 or 4 of them that went back the next day, and to examine this a little bit closer in daylight, and where he felt a little more comfortable having people with him. And so they went to look around, and none of them could explain what kind of animal would do this. There's no cougar there. We don't have bears in our area. It's it is such a rare thing that it would make a newspaper if a bear was anywhere near this area. This is mainly farmland, and with some forest along the lake, the Coal Lake, and then our property has quite a bit of trees, and never in our lives have we encountered a bear here. But anyway, we have no other terry animals that would do this. None of it makes sense. So anyway, and then another experience he had was very close to our property. He was again ATVing or skidooing, and he had paused to take something. Just made him pause on the trail, and he wanted to kind of just look around and take a minute, because something was just kind of making him feel off. And so we kind of stopped his machine and was looking around, and all of a sudden he said there was this growl, and it was so loud and so deep he could feel it in his chest. It was vibrating, it was terrifying. And so he didn't even want to take time to look at where this was coming from. But he said it certainly was not, again, of a predatory animal that would have done this. There's nothing that would have vibrated his chest and affected him in that way physically. So, yeah. So anyway, that's in relation to Dogman. That's a couple stories that I got that's from the area. Dogmen have been seen everywhere throughout this area. From there's a community called New Sarepta that is northeast of us. About 20 minutes. And then all the way to Musqueam and Wetaskiwin, those two communities Dogmen have been seen in, and Musqueam is about 40 minutes from me, 35 to 40 minutes southwest, sort of southwest from us. And Wetaskiwin's 15 minutes southwest of us. And there's kind of this belt where they've been seen all throughout. There's all kinds of stories when I started doing the research on Reddit, and then people coming to our tours who live in these communities who've shared their experiences.
Do you have any, I know no one can really give a direct answer, but do you have any kind of inclination of what you really think these things are? If they're actually from here, if they're from a different realm? I kind of lean towards the fact that they could disappear and everything else. They're not necessarily from here, but it also seems weird that people see them eating things. So if they're like a spirit, they wouldn't be eating. And if they're a flesh and blood creature, how they transverse and how they disappear. How can you track one, all of a sudden the track stop and they're just vanished? Or you see, like you said, you saw the eyes and the whole thing just vanishes. There's something very unnatural about it in general. Like obviously a walking or upright walking canine's unnatural anyways, but it's just, there's just a lot of weirdness that goes on with it. Like it's hard to explain. So I didn't know if you had any of your own opinions of what you think these things could actually be.
Well, for those who say they've seen it eating, I would kind of go back to those people and say, really think back. Did you see them truly eating, or did you see them mimicking eating? Because there's one story of a woman who's seen it down the States, crouched on the side of the road, and it was holding the meat in its front paws, but it actually wasn't eating. It gives us the illusion that we assume they're eating, but it's just standing there mimicking the motions of eating. So we don't know if they actually eat. I know the couple in Ohio, they provide offerings to theirs. Apparently these things, there's like breads and stuff like that, but I don't know what they do with it. It just disappears. So I don't know if it's eaten or not.
That could also be any type of animal comes up and takes that. That's kind of where I feel like when you leave food out for something, you don't really know what's taking it.
Well, and I think that can get dangerous, because what happens when you stop providing that food?
Yeah.
Then what it's still some kind of a predatory creature. But in terms of your question, I do believe that this is something that has what would you call it? Paranormal or supernatural, yes, that's a perfect word, thank you, aspect to it. I don't believe that they're just some physical wolf that can walk on their hind legs. I think they have capabilities beyond our understanding. I do believe that because they are frequently seen at locations where there are ley line crossings. Portals are also known to be at locations where there are ley line crossings. We have ley line crossings very close to us in Alice. Our area of Alberta is known to have, we're a ley line kind of hotspot. And so I do think that there is that component to it. They have an ability to come and go between locations, and through portals, and kind of just come and go as they desire. I think they also have an ability to communicate. Like there's other pieces to it where we have a lot of damaged trees on our property, and I think so. This answers the question of why would it be on our roof. I think they like being up high, looking around. I think it gives them the best vantage point. Our house is the highest point to be able to overlook this specific area, our property. And so they go up there so that they can look around. And yes, there are some where I've seen videos where deer carcasses have been hauled up on the roof of houses. Well, I mean, think about it. If you want to go and eat with a good view, perhaps that's where they go to take their food while they're sitting and looking around or whatever. We have some tall trees, and these trees keep getting broken, and it's only at the highest points of our property where there's hills. And these are strong trees that are not close to dying. We've seen claw marks. My husband's taken his massive ladder out way out into our forest where we found a tree that it freshly happened to. So we found sets of 3 claws, 2 feet apart. So a set of 3 claws dug in, and then 2 feet up the tree, another set of 3 claws dug into the tree, then 2 feet up, another set. It goes up 18 feet, and then the tree's broken completely. Like the tree's bent right over at 18 feet high. There's no more claw marks above the break. What I think's happening is these things are massive. You have an 8 to 10 foot wolf, who knows how much it weighs, very muscular. And if they're trying to climb, they're getting to a point where the tree can't bear the weight. The tree eventually breaks over, and they either fall or they jump down or they climb down, who knows. But they're using their hind legs to dig in and hold them as they're climbing up, is what I'm thinking. And that kind of theory comes from the one story I heard coming out of the States, where a father and daughter were off walking through a forest, and they heard a thud, and they had watched this dogman climbing a tree, and it fell out of the tree, and the tree had broke, and when it landed, it made this horrendous thud sound, and it kind of brushed itself off and kind of ran off. So that's why I think perhaps that's where that's coming from in regards to our property. Yeah, but I do think that they are not of this world. I think they have a lot of ancient knowledge, like I said before.
That's
I think
the way if I would lean to, if they actually exist. Obviously, like, again, I've seen something, you've seen something. Clearly, we've seen something, but until there's really, I can't say what it is one way or another because I'm no expert. And I've said this a lot lately. I'll never claim to be an expert of anything because I feel like there's too many so-called experts that know every little thing about these supposed dogmen, but yet they don't have any proof that they exist on their own end. But they can tell you their habits, why they do this, why they do that. I was like, this is all just your guys' opinions.
it's theories. Yeah, it's all theories. And I mean, and that's based on other perhaps canine behaviors or other animals that climb behaviors. It's based on physics, size, all their body genetics, all that sort of stuff that we kind of look at and take from a series of a whole bunch of different stories that have been shared, or I don't want to use the word stories, but a whole bunch of encounters that have been shared by other people, that I think you kind of start to notice some trends happening along some of them.
I'm trying to get away from using the word stories too. I've done it for over a year and it's really hard, but I was like, I'm trying to go to encounters because stories seems like you're trying to discredit someone, and that's not what I'm trying to do.
For sure.
The other thing that I was going to ask is, have you heard anything about how these things supposedly talk telepathically?
Yes, I have heard that. I've attempted it with them, to be honest with you, just so I could at least let them know. Perhaps they listen. I've never gotten an acknowledgement from them that I know of, that I'm aware of. Maybe they did communicate with me and I just didn't pick up on it. So, but yes, I have heard that that's something that they have been known to do at times.
Because that's where I come back to with those strange, like, supernatural elements to it. If this thing is a normal creature, how could it speak to you telepathically? And
yes,
I don't remember exactly where I read it at or what I listened to, but I remember someone talking about one of these things was looking at their window and they ran and hid into another room and they could hear it like calling out to them to let it in. It was in its head. Like the person said they could hear it in his head. This thing was saying, "Let me in." And I go back to, why would a 7 foot tall, 8 foot tall beast like this peck at your window and ask you to let it in? And I recently interviewed someone, and again, he doesn't know if it's Dogman. He didn't hear it himself, and they're from Texas, and I think he's part Navajo, so there it's like skinwalker taboo and everything else. But he was talking about how his wife had heard like her mother calling out to her in the woods. but it wasn't her mom. And then his stepson supposedly heard his mom calling out to him to come outside at like 3 a.m. from the window. He woke up and seen him out there. He's like, what do you do? He's like, Mom says I got to come out for school. He's like, no, you need to go back to bed. It's like 3 a.m. He said he never heard these voices, but it was like mimicking people's voices to come outside. That's where I go back to. I was like, why would something want you to invite it in? Why would something trying to lure you outside? Like, again, if it wanted to get you, it could just burst through a window or grab to the door, like whatever it wanted to do. It's got like a weird element to it. And I started talking about this here lately. If you go back to the old Grimm fairy tales, there was a lot of big bad wolf things. Little Red Riding Hood had a big bad wolf. What do? He impersonated grandma. He looked like a person. The 3 little pigs, what did he say to the little pigs? Little pigs, let me in.
Yeah.
And
He climbed the chimney and he fell down into the soup.
Yep.
Into the pot that was boiling down the chimney. Yep.
Yeah, so these old stories, these old fables are from hundreds of years ago. And a lot of the stories that I've heard or experiences or whatever you want to call them from people, they all seem to go back with the same similarities. They all have this upright walking dog man, wolf man, whatever you want to call them. But they have some weirdness to them. Like, again, the whole let me in. To me, I was like, I don't know if anyone's ever like made that connection, but I just started thinking about it. I was like, if someone is saying that this thing's telling them to let me in, are they just making it up because they subconsciously remember like little pig, let me in? Or is this something that's actually, why did they write that in the old fairy tale?
Right.
So.
And I struggle with that because our experiences were obviously not threatening in any way. We never felt intimidated by our experiences at all here. I know we had one situation that happened one night. We didn't see anything. I can't even tell you if it was paranormal in nature, but we have on our front door, we have the door handle, the type where you push down with your thumb in order to open the front door from the outside. You got to hold the handle and then push down with your thumb. So you need opposable thumbs to do this. And we had something. Thank God our deadbolt was locked. Something was trying to open our door outside. And when we flicked on that same interior light to go running, this was now back then, this was a number of years ago. Back then, it was our son, our daughter, and then us. We were all watching a movie right by the front door when it happened in our front TV room. And we went running to the door to go, what was that? And as we turned the light on, we obviously startled something because I had a ceramic terracotta sort of style, really heavy bird bath. And it was a 2-piece. And so it was the bowl part was sitting on the stand, and like it took a lot of effort to lift this thing. It was heavy and almost like a painted cement kind of feel to it. And it knocked that off and broke it in half as it was, whatever it was, fled the front entryway. But we were immediately at the door because we were watching the front door when we were hearing something trying to open that door before we turned the light on. It was turning the light on that startled it. And to this day, we have no idea. We should have opened that door and been able to see something scurrying across the lawn, taken off in any direction. We have a very wide 180 view, and there we couldn't see anything. We were right behind it. We didn't pause whatsoever. We chased that. We went right to that door running and opened it. And I don't know. I can't explain whatever it was, whatever critter it was, or whether it was a paranormal in nature or not, but something was trying to open that door to get in.
Yeah. It'd be strange if it was a person, especially if it knows you're home.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can hear outside on the front doorstep when a movie is playing, because we're right there. You can hear clearly. But yeah, so I don't include that in my paranormal stories because I have no way of knowing, but it was strange. And as I think about it, I'm like, what animal has the ability to try to pull on a door and push down with thumbs? I don't know. So, but I never have had it trying to ask to come in. I've never felt at any point where, laying in my bed, this fear that it's going to be, coming to get me, and it never. I certainly keep all my curtains closed, but I always did. That's just a habit of mine. I never leave them open. My front entryway has no curtains, but those windows, you can't really see much into the house from there. So yeah, I don't know.
I know, like, one of the running myths of this is these things are evil and they feed off of your fear. And from what you said, you guys aren't afraid. You've never shown it any fear. And when I had my experience, I was confused. I wasn't afraid. So when I stared at it for those couple of seconds when it was looking at me, I was just like, what is this? I've never seen a dog stand up like this before.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't terrified, even though it growled before I walked up to it. Like, it growled, but to me, I still thought it was just a dog that got hit by a car laying in the middle of the road at first. Like, it's not, it wasn't anything that I thought was strange up until afterwards, after it stood up and everything else. But at that point, I still wasn't afraid of it. I was just like, what? And
I think they're very misunderstood. I do not believe they're evil. I think they have the capacity to defend themselves. They have the capacity to be aggressive if needed, if cornered, or if you're being aggressive towards them. But I also think that if you're shooting at them, they have the ability to just disappear into their portal anyway. So we can't capture them on camera properly for that very reason. I know that what I was learning and reading is infrared cameras seem to be getting better luck at starting to kind of perhaps capture some anomaly when they're present and start to gather some evidence of them. I think it's infrared. I don't know. Have you heard?
I think it's full spectrum.
It could be, yeah, okay. It could be full. It's I'm so terrible with technology.
There's thermal and infrared and full spectrum.
Could be thermal. No, not there. It's the one that it's the 3 letters of I can just imagine listeners going and screaming at their at their speakers, going, "It's this, it's this." It slipped my mind at the moment, but we don't have one of those. It's something I would love to be able. It's on my wish list to one day buy. I think they're quite expensive cameras to get, the type that I know seem to be getting some good luck with them. But I don't know. Like, what I do in the tours is I don't pay any attention. I don't go out to seek. So we either just wear a GoPro and we act normal. We don't act like we're trying to capture. If I'm holding my cell phone videoing, I just hold it up facing the forest as I'm talking, and I just like hold it in a place alongside facing, say, my right into the trees as I'm talking, and I just ignore whatever is happening over there. And that was how I captured 2 of them watching us in the forest. And you could see them you could see when you zoom in, other than the eyes, you can see the shape of the head. You can see the ears. You can see the snout. You can, the 2-tone gray, you can see across the snout, and the bridge of the nose up between the eyes, there's a lighter shade of gray. And then up around the outsides of the eyes, it's a different shade of gray before it matches up to the ears. Like you can see the fur, even though I'm zoomed in and it's a night video off of the cell phone, you certainly can make out the shape of everything on them. So,
yeah,
on one, I should say, not both, just the one.
So what I saw was just complete solid black. I didn't see anything else on it besides just black, and its fur was all puffy like a chow dog. So,
yeah.
So it had the German Shepherd head, all black, but its fur was very thick, puffy fur. Like I said, I always took it off as just a very large dog, but when it stood up, I'm 6'3" and it's about my height. So again, I don't know of any dog that's that tall.
Yeah, exactly. That will be able to stand there.
Yeah, and drop its arms off like shoulders drop down. Dogs don't have shoulders like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's always been the strange thing with me. And for 15 years, I tried to write that off as it just was normal, had to have been a normal dog, but I can't ever get back to, there's a lot more to that whole story other than just that, but it gets to the point to where it's like, I can't explain it away anymore. So I am more open to other possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's cool.
But yeah, unless you have anything else you'd like to talk about, I think we can probably get close to wrapping this one up.
No, I think that's all that I have from our experiences that I share. Again, like if anyone is up in our area around Leduc, Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, Camrose area, or if you're going to be in our area, reach out to Haunted Hollow on Facebook in Leduc County, and Haunted Hollow is our page name, and we do provide private tours, and we have tickets for sale for tours on weekends, Fridays and Saturdays typically. But if we have people requesting a large group private tour, then we do that with them as well. And we've had paranormal investigators come out and just book the place to come out for the night and investigate. So yeah, other than that, so it's kind of where we're at with Dogman stuff.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me. If you'd like to send me links to where they can find it, I'll add those to the show notes. That way anyone interested can find your page and everything.
For sure, I'll do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll be doing the same for you for your podcast as well when it comes time to share it on my page.
Yeah. Not sure when exactly it'll air. I'll have to go in there and check because I've got quite a few episodes already recorded. So
no worries.
But well, again, I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me. If you'd like to stay on here for a few minutes afterwards, I'd talk to you more about my experience. I just don't want to go on. I don't like making the podcast about myself.
Sure, I can do that.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Take care.
Remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.